Hi and welcome to SCW here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. We're going through a time machine today, going all the way back to 1993 for WrestleMania 9. The review for you here on SCW. Is it the worst WrestleMania of all time? I think that tells you pretty quickly that this is not one of the better WrestleManias, but I'm going to go through each match for you, give my review on it, my take on it, why I think this is one of the worst WrestleManias of all time, and also what I would do to have made it better, which I think sometimes is quite fun to do, rather than just going through some of the better ones and saying, oh, this is great, this is great. Let's dissect something and see if we can improve it together. And I'd like to know your thoughts of this show if you've seen it in the comments below. Of course, it took place in Las Vegas, Nevada, in Caesar's Palace as well. An attendance of over 16,000 fans were there. It was an outdoor stadium as well, which you can see right now on your screen. I really like the way that it was put together, the way of the look of this show. It felt unique, it felt special. Even as a child watching this, I felt, wow, this looked really cool as a WrestleMania stadium, as an environment to watch this. This was one of the more special shows to have felt to watch as a young person, even though the matches themselves, the card, weren't necessarily that great. But one thing I wasn't aware of until actually just a couple of weeks ago, actually, there was a dark match at WrestleMania 9 before things went on the air, and it is available to see. Tito Santana against Papa Shango. Jim Ross, this is his first day with the company, with WWE. It's his first event as well, and during this dark match, because it's not for anyone's television eyes or anything like that, it's not, you know, something that we were supposed to see, you can hear Bruce Pritchard talking to Jim Ross and actually explaining how things should and shouldn't be done through this match being put together. But as a match itself, it goes about 8 minutes long. Tito Santana and Papa Shango. It's okay, it does what it needs to do. It warms the crowd up, which is exactly the purpose of a dark match. Tito Santana picking up the victory. A bit of a lame finish, to be honest. I mean, Papa Shango jumps off of the top rope, or the second rope I should say, with an elbow drop, misses and gets pinned for the pinfall. But what I would say is that this was a standard match, and it was one of the better matches of the whole show. If you can find it, it's worth going to watch, purely for the fact, as I say, Jim Ross and Bruce Pritchard actually having discussions over the headsets, and as well the match itself. If you like WrestleMania 9, I think that this actually is a match that's worth going to check out. So going into the show itself then, and of course WrestleMania 9, the spectacle, you know, like with Caesar's Palace, we had that sort of Colosseum theme, where Julius Caesar and Cleopatra come into the ring as well, very Roman themed. I must apologise, by the way, my toga's in the wash, so that's why it's not here for you on show here today. But of course Gorilla Monsoon was there. Of course he was like the host of WrestleMania, actually togaed up as well. Jim Ross, as we already mentioned there, actually announced that he will be a part of the World Wrestling Federation going forward and be on the commentary team. Of course, he's joined by Randy Savage, and coming down, Randy Savage is brought to the ringside almost like grapes being fed, carried down, very nice the way he was done. Bobby Heenan, on the other hand, on the back of a camel, the wrong way round. Very comedic, very fun, and this, to be fair, this ceremony at the start of the show, if you just stopped WrestleMania 9 here, I probably would give it a higher grade at the end. This was actually quite entertaining, a great fun way to kick off the event. Like I say, everyone togered up as well, sitting at ringside. This was great to see. Some may be disappointed on the commentary booth that Vince McMahon wasn't there. Of course, he did a lot of the commentary at that point for the World Wrestling Federation, but for me, this for me feels legendary that Jim Ross is here, and watching, because I did a lot of the build up towards this for this show. I watched all the Monday Night Raws and stuff like that going into it, marching to WrestleMania as well. We had to have Vince McMahon a lot of there, and also Rob Bartlett was a part of the Raw commentary, and I must say, he's absolutely atrocious. Probably my least favourite commentator I've ever listened to, worse than Mike Adamle, if people actually can remember that back in 2008 as well. So for me, I was just pleased to hear that we had a nice sounding commentary team. Jim Ross is very good at what he does. Bobby Heenan was on fire during the show, as he always is, and Randy Savage does bring some good things to the commentary table as well. So for me, this is a trio really worked. The opening match on the show was the Intercontinental Championship. We started off big here. Shawn Michaels, who'd been champion since, I believe, Saturday Night Main Event in around October 1992, so he held the belt for just under 6 months, taking on the undefeated Tatanka, who'd been in the company for over a year. This has been a good put together match. Tatanka had won over Shawn Michaels in a couple of matches leading up to the event. He beat him in a singles match, almost like a proving ground match, and then a six-man tag on Raw as well. So coming into this, Tatanka was red hot, and you kind of felt yourself that we were going to get a brand new Intercontinental Champion. But this wasn't an ordinary singles match. There were other components that led into this match as well. One thing that was a big shock, seeing Shawn Michaels on his entrance, he actually was accompanied by Luna Vachon, who was making her debut at WrestleMania 9, which of course was a big surprise. She would have not been involved anywhere that I'd seen on the build-up to this, particularly going through the Raws as well. So this was a big shock seeing her here. And Sensational Sherry come down to the ring looking like that she was in Tatanka's corner. Of course, Sensational Sherry had been a manager to Shawn Michaels previously. There'd been a little bit of altercation with her, Shawn and Marty Jannetty in the Royal Rumble as well, not knowing what side she would be on that show. It seemed here that she was pro Tatanka here at WrestleMania 9. And this match was lengthy. Arguably, you could turn around and say that it needed a few minutes chunked off of it. But overall, I think this was good. I think this is one of the best matches of the night, which is good. You want to start off your show with one of your better matches of the evening. But for me, this had a bit of a sour finish. Just a lot of attack was being done on body parts during this, and it kind of felt like that was nice for narrative of the story. But as we got towards the end of the match here, Shawn Michaels misses a high crossbody from the ring apron to the outside, hits himself on the steel steps. Tatanka rolls back into the ring as the count goes on. The referee looks like he gets to what is the count of 8, and Shawn Michaels decides to pull the leg of the referee and pull him to the outside of the ring. Once Shawn goes back into the ring, he becomes victim, actually goes into the fallaway slam of Tatanka. Tatanka thinks he's going to get the pinfall victory, become the new Intercontinental Champion. Instead, the referee comes back into the ring, actually pats Tatanka on the shoulder, and then signals for the bell. And actually, instead of a DQ, it goes for the count-out victory. So, for me, this kind of it's just a bit sour grapes. It feels like WWE booked themselves into a corner with this match, because all the good work that had been done building up to this moment of the finish unfortunately destroys the match. Shawn Michaels had been Intercontinental Champion for a long time. They didn't want him to lose the belt on this night. Perhaps they wanted Tatanka to go further towards the main event at this point, perhaps wanting to continue his undefeated streak, which he did all the way to near the end of 1993 when he eventually lost it to Ludwig Borger. As a little throwback name for you there. But of course as well, Shawn Michaels actually lost the championship not too in the future to Marty Jannetty on Raw. So there's lots of question marks here of what the booking strategy was going in, but it felt like that this was a good match they could put together. They wanted Tatanka to look strong and still be undefeated after the match, but they didn't want Shawn to lose the championship. So arguably you could turn around and say that maybe this was not the right match to book on this card. But the match was decent, but unfortunately very, very sour finish. And it didn't quite end there. Luna Vachon actually attacking Sensational Sherry as well at ringside, actually body slamming her on the outside of the floor as well, which looked quite devastating. So yeah, that sort of continues that storyline going on into the future. But yeah, a very interesting start to the show. And this was followed by the Steiner brothers against the Headshrinkers, two really good tag teams. I really like these tag teams back in the day, both as well former tag team champions as well. Not at this point though, the Steiner brothers would win those championships later in the year. But going into the match itself, we're getting quite a lengthy match, but there's some nice spots in this match. I like the fact that Steiner brothers both on the same top turnbuckle at one point, jumping off to land on the Headshrinkers. And as well, they looked like what was in the Doomsday, one of the Headshrinkers coming off the top rope and Rick Steiner catching him, turning it into a power slam as well. Really cool looking spot. There were some really good things in this, but unfortunately again, the finish does ruin the match. So Scott Steiner hitting his Frankensteiner in a botched way to get the 1-2-3, which otherwise would have been a very solid encounter. I did enjoy this match. It was just the finish, unfortunately, that let it down. And unfortunately, this is just going to be a reoccurring theme as we go through the rest of the evening. Next on the card was Doink versus Crush. Now, just a little bit of the build up here for you this match. Crush was unhappy that Doink was evil Doink at this point and making children cry. So Crush wanted to be the protector of that. Of course, Doink wanted to give out an apology. He gave a flower, I believe it was, to Crush on Superstars. As Crush went to accept it and go towards the back, Doink ripped off like a prosthetic arm that he had there and actually attacked Crush with this arm, which was very shocking for around the time in 1993. So coming round then to the show itself, and of course I don't usually go to the backstage interviews, but I do on this occasion. Doink had some meaningful words here that he said to me and Gene Oakland, saying that by the end of this match, Crush would be seeing double vision, which I must admit, as a child, I didn't see what was coming. I had no clue at all, but I tell you what, it does really play into the narrative of what happens with this match. So going into it then, it was an 8-minute match. It didn't need to be any longer. It did exactly what it said on the tin here with these two in the ring together. There is a ref bump, so the ref is out, but Crush hits his finishing move on Doink in the center of the ring. The cranium crunch is actually on Doink at this point, and a second Doink comes from underneath the ring with a prosthetic arm to come into the ring to hit Crush on the back of the head with it, knocking him clean out to the floor, and we've got two Doinks staring at each other in the middle of the ring, almost being symmetrical as well. This is a really cool visual, and I must admit, this is possibly my favourite finish of the entire card. Instead about bad finishes, I quite like the way that this one has been put together here, because this was just shock value altogether. There was more than one Doink. You just didn't see that coming. The evil clown always had a way to find himself with a one-upsmanship to get himself the victory at WrestleMania. Of course, that second Doink would go underneath the ring, the referee would revive, and there would be a 1-2-3 count. A little quick shout as well after the match to Bill Alfonso. Of course, Fonzie was a referee in WWE at this point, to tell the referee there was two Doinks, there's a second one there. They went to look under the ring, couldn't find the second Doinks. Of course, the result did stand. I must admit, when I was watching this at the time, looking back at it over so many years, I was thinking, please don't say there's another DQ finish already. We're only on match 3, but it didn't play out that way. I think it was the right move. Doink picking up the victory there at WrestleMania 9. The match itself, it's okay. It's nothing special, but for me, I think this has to go as a highlight of the night, just purely for that finish itself. It's certainly something special and worth going to check out. Funny little story just before we go on to the next match. The old FCW developmental territory, you may remember that for WWE back in the day. Steve Kern, who was a part of that, he does actually reveal on a WWE documentary that he spent more than 5 hours under the ring as the second Doink the Clown. He was the one that played it, and then he came out from the ring, obviously, hit Crush over the back of the head, did the stuff with Doink, then went back under the ring until the remainder of the show. He couldn't go backstage because fans would see him, so he was actually under the ring for the entire WrestleMania before fans came in and after they left. Talk about dedication. Thankfully, he was given a TV screen to keep an eye on what was going on. He did manage to keep up with the action, had snacks as well and drink and stuff, and you know, he was taken care of under the ring, which is a good thing to see. But yeah, a fun little story and anecdote that's come from WrestleMania 9 of him playing the second Doink the Clown. Next was a very fast match between Razor Ramon against Bob Backlund. Both have been on a winning streak going into this match here. Razor not lost since losing at the Royal Rumble to Bret Hart in the WWF Championship match, and Bob Backlund, he'd come back at the Royal Rumble 1993, lasted like just around an hour in that Rumble match, and then went on to be undefeated as well, leading into this WrestleMania match. Apparently Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, was a bit hurt going into this match, so this could be the reason why this was cut short, but it was just a couple of minutes long. Razor picking up the victory with the just a small package, a very basic wrestling move, which you would have said that, you know, Razor would have been the dirty heel at this point, and Backlund would be the one looking to do that sort of thing, but that wasn't the way it played out, so there's not really much to give on this match. I can't really give it a good grade necessarily. I can't really give it much of a bad grade either, because it wasn't much of a match. I can just say I was disappointed it wasn't given more time, but I was a big Razor Ramon fan. I wasn't such a big Bob Backlund fan back in the day. Honestly, Bob Backlund, looking at me 1993, it was like the 1970s had been actually imaged through onto my TV screen. He makes it look so dated with his haircut, bless him, but he did go on to have a lengthy run with the company after that. He'd been actually out of action for a long time before he returned at the 93 Royal Rumble, and of course he did go on to have famous matches with Bret Hart and even become WWE champion at some point, so it wasn't all bad for Backlund, even if this wasn't one of the finest showings. Boy oh boy, next we've got a messy one, haven't we here? There'll be a bit of a rant with this one. The MegaManiacs, Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake, trying to win the tag team championships against Money Inc. The build up to this match here, the storyline was based on Brutus Beefcake returning on Raw, had given a very heartfelt promo on what had been going on for him with his horrible accident he had, the passing of his parents as well, and the fact that he, you know, was able to get back into the ring after, you know, having a horrible accident. His face had to be completely reconstructed, and he was able to come back, and he was willing to challenge someone in the ring. He wanted to get back into action. Money Inc. answered the call, but instead of getting a fair encounter, instead it ended up with actually Money Inc. using the briefcase, RRS's briefcase, to smash Brutus Beefcake in the face, and of course he was bloodied open at this point. Shock value also to a lot of the people with Brutus Beefcake pouring his heart out, giving that story that big comeback to get that big spot. This actually made Hulk Hogan come back. Of course, Hogan had been missing since after WrestleMania 8. The big steroid scandal had been going around at the time. But of course, Hogan come back there to the defense of his friend Brutus. Apparently, he was with Brutus as well when he was in hospital. He's here for him now, and he was going to get revenge for Brutus Beefcake. And them two together were going to be the MegaManiacs and were going to go against Money Inc. And of course, Jimmy Hart as well was the manager of Money Incorporated. After what transpired with Brutus Beefcake, he actually aligned himself with Hogan and Beefcake and was no longer with Money Inc. So going into the match itself then, both wearing the red, or all of them wearing the red and yellow. Brutus Beefcake as well having some sort of mask shield covering his face as well. Going into the match, this was quite a lengthy one, but what was really strange here was that the baby faces were acting like heels throughout the entire match. They were almost cheating on Money Inc. the entire way through, which just really destroys the narrative. These are meant to be your strong baby faces, everyone on their side. The sympathy story for Brutus here should be for the MegaManiacs to go and win those tag team championships. But instead, what we got was another ref bump. That was once again what we got here. The referee was knocked out as Brutus Beefcake was trying to make the tag to Hogan. He successfully did so. Hogan comes into the ring, hulking up as he usually would, but he got the titanium mask that Brutus Beefcake had, hitting both of Money Inc. over the face of it, knocking both of them out. Both Hogan and Brutus go to make the pinfall. Jimmy Hart, seeing that the referee is unconscious, turns his jacket inside out from the red and yellow to like referee stripes, puts that around him and counts the 1, 2, 3 on both of the guys. The crowd celebrates, weirdly enough, while Hogan and Beefcake celebrate as well. The referee comes to and then calls for the disqualification. This for me is just mind-baffling. I mean, for multiple different reasons. I mean, who in their right mind, even as a child, I did not buy this. Who, if Jimmy Hart giving the 3 count here, it just makes no sense whatsoever. It's something that I dare say it's for children, but I was very young watching this for the first time and didn't believe in it. I absolutely detested it. I just think this should have been a clear Money Inc. being the heels here, you know, trying to do dirty tactics the whole way through, beating on Brutus. Hogan comes in, makes the save there, and perhaps Brutus gets the tag in ultimately to get the 1, 2, 3 and become tag team champions. But instead, it's a DQ finish where the babyfaces are just basically mucking around the whole match, not taking anything seriously, just lapping up that the crowd are there. The crowd are happy to see Hogan. It's been a year, understandably, but you know what? This whole thing for me was a complete mess and a really criminal booking point, and we do know why as it goes later in the evening. But I mean, for me, the obvious thing here was that we should have had new tag team champions, even if it wasn't for the long term. That was what the storyline was crying out for here, but instead it was a complete mess and something that was just not believable either. Really, go back and watch the finish. If you haven't seen it, it's one of the most stupid finishes I think I've ever seen to a wrestling match. And afterwards, I mean, Jimmy Hart throwing the referee over the top rope as well there's, and then they go and celebrate like they've won the match. Just awful booking all round. I really detested this match. Next, we had the narcissist Lex Luger. Who remembers the narcissist character before Lex Express taking on Mr. Perfect? Mr. Perfect, of course, was in line with Bobby Heenan. Of course, Mr. Perfect went babyface and left Heenan to the side. Heenan got someone new in, Lex Luger debuting at the Royal Rumble. Of course, the narcissist gimmick, completely loved the bodybuilder style thing, which of course, that's what Lex was brought into the World Wrestling Federation to do, was the bodybuilding. Before that had to be scrapped. So obviously he then was an in-ring competitor. This match, there's nothing much to it really. I mean, Luger wasn't on his strongest performance this night. Mr. Perfect is fantastic, by the way. You could even argue that you'd have liked to see him, as we go later in it, Perfect in a different match. But nonetheless, I think this match did make sense to put together with the storyline build that we had going in. Luger did pick up the victory with the roll-up. It was like a backslide roll-up, but Mr. Perfect's feet were in the ropes, which should have actually signaled a break here. It wasn't a good night for the officials, let's just put it that way, and Luger picks up the victory. And of course, afterwards, Mr. Perfect kind of complaining to the referee of like, my feet were on the ropes, and we see that Luger actually runs in and hits his arm, the forearm that he does with the steel plate in it. That was his finish, of course, back at that point. He actually hit that on Mr. Perfect, put one foot on Mr. Perfect and signaled he would have won the match 1, 2, 3 very easily. Luger goes himself to the back. After a short time, Mr. Perfect does come around, realises that he's been attacked after the match is finished, goes to chase down Luger afterwards, goes actually through the backstage. We actually follow this as well, very interesting, goes towards the parking lot sort of area, almost like a garage kind of area, and of course Mr. Perfect goes to attack Lex Luger, but actually gets attacked by Shawn Michaels as well, so Mr. Perfect ends up laid out via Shawn Michaels and Lex Luger. So Shawn Michaels did take a couple of whacks before, which was almost, you know, that antagonated him to go and make that attack. And I suppose many people would be crying out saying we should have had Perfect and Shawn Michaels, which of course that match does happen later down the line. But still, for me, that this was okay, but again, a screwy finish is not something you need at WrestleMania. I did, just a side note before we go on, this was a part of the European tour as well, and I was very thankful to be able to go for as a young child as well to Wembley Arena. We went to go and see it. It was the main event, actually, was Mr. Perfect against Lex Luger. If you wondered, Perfect does get his revenge and does beat Lex Luger in a rematch on the European tour. I'm sure they had many of them over the European tour with multiple different decisions, but on this night, Perfect did get the victory. So if you were wondering what happened at Wembley Arena back in '93 on the European tour, got that little exclusive for me here first. Next is the one on which I'm sure probably many people clicked this video for alone. The Undertaker taking on Giant Gonzales. Now, of course, The Undertaker was involved in the Royal Rumble match in 1993. Undertaker had already defeated Kamala, and Harvey Wippleman wasn't happy about it. It did lead to Kamala actually going babyface as well, leaving Harvey and Kim Shi, but instead Harvey Wippleman going out to take someone to take out The Undertaker, and Giant Gonzales was the guy they had in mind. The bodysuit, let's just get that one out of the way. I'm not sure who made the idea that that's how Giant Gonzales should look. Honestly, it is baffling for the eyes at this age. It was baffling even at a younger age. I don't quite understand what the hell was going on with that. But anyway, into the match itself there, and just to say before we get into it, Undertaker, probably one of his best entrances ever at WrestleMania. I really enjoyed it with the Vulture, him coming down to the ring. It was a really cool, nostalgic feel watching that over again. I really did enjoy that. It certainly is much better than the match. The match is absolute horse. Yeah, it's not good at all. It's definitely with ease the worst Undertaker match in his WrestleMania streak and history in general. To take the wins and the losses, it's definitely the worst one. There is no comparison. This match finishes on a DQ finish, just as we needed another DQ or another bad finish on this show. It looked to be a cloth of what looked to be like chloroform put on the Undertaker to put him to sleep. Obviously couldn't put the Undertaker away, and felt that he couldn't do it any other way, so this was the way they finished the match. It's to protect Giant Gonzales as well, to further the storyline further, which, yes, it did go all the way to SummerSlam 1993, which arguably, in my opinion, is a worse show than this show. I look forward to that. I have to review that one. But looking at it, I mean, to be honest, this is just awful. And for me, it's a match again. I don't know who in their right mind thought that this was a good signing, bringing Giant Gonzales in, because he just never was the strongest professional wrestler. Now, of course, he's no longer with us, sadly, but for me, this match it was never going to end well. This was an attraction match. Giant Gonzales being so big, was like 8 foot tall, near enough. Undertaker being near 7 foot tall, so that was the idea of the match. But in execution, you always knew it probably wasn't going to be the cleanest, smoothest match. This needed to be a fairly shortish match, and you needed the Undertaker to go over. But weirdly, this was done, which was, again, I said earlier on, the MegaManiacs was one of the worst finishes. This might just be the worst finish I've ever seen to a match. It just might be it, but I'm sure there are worse ones out there. Let me know what you think in the comments below, ones you think are the worst. But yeah, this was just absolutely awful. This for me is probably one of the biggest disappointments of the entire WrestleMania card. I really disliked it. After this, going backstage, we did have an interview, Mean Gene, with Hulk Hogan, who actually said that all the Hulkamaniacs were on Bret Hart's side going into the main event, but Hogan, he seems to have dropped everything with Brutus Beefcake and Money going now. He wants to look himself and challenge the winner of the main event for a WWF Championship match. Hogan wants the winner of Bret versus Yoko, and he had a good feeling that the championship was staying in the US of A, forgetting that, of course, that Bret Hart is actually Canadian, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, nonetheless, for me, as an interview segment, it just goes to show what is wrong with all the booking there. They did a great build-up with Hogan's match, but Jesus, comes to WrestleMania, it just seems everything gets dropped in the hat. And yeah, Hogan, it seems like he's going into business for himself, which is just not fun to see from my personal point of view. It's main event time then, and it's the WWE Championship at Bret the Hitman Hart. I was a big fan of as champion, been champion since, again, I think around about the end of summer, early autumn of 1992, winning against Ric Flair to win the WWF Championship at the time. Of course, he'd not long lost the Intercontinental Championship at SummerSlam to the British Bulldog, but he's taken on Yokozuna, of course, the 500-pound sumo wrestler, which of course was meant to be from Japan, who was undefeated as well and won the Royal Rumble. And ironically enough, on the build-up, it was the first time ever announced that a Royal Rumble winner would go on to challenge the champion at WrestleMania. That had never been done before. It was the first time it was announced. It had happened before that Hogan won the Rumble in '91 and then took on the champion Sergeant Slaughter at WrestleMania 7 and won, but it was never where you linked 2 and 2 together before that. Actually, it was the outright that if you won the Rumble, you would go to Mania. So this was a first time ever, certainly something for your trivia knowledge if you didn't know it already. And this match was built on the fact that Yokozuna couldn't really be taken off of his feet, and a couple of people did manage to do it on the road to WrestleMania. Hacksaw Jim Duggan did get him off his feet, the first person seemingly to do it, but of course then would go on to lose the match. Randy Savage, again the same, marching to Mania as well, marching to WrestleMania 9, was unsuccessful in doing so. Bret the Hitman Hart, in a contract signing, said that he was going to be able to do it, but not just do that, but also defeat Yokozuna. Of course, Yokozuna actually then hit the banzai drop on Bret Hart a couple of times as well, which made you think there was no belief Bret Hart would actually win this match. So that was your storyline going into this. I think it was really powerful the way it was put together with Yoko, especially with the banzai drops as well. That felt like it was going to be an important, integral part of this match and the storyline. It didn't kind of work out that way. We didn't really get much when it comes to the banzai drop, which is a nitpick and a disappointment for me. But what I would turn around and say is that this match was pretty good. It was alright. This was a good match. This is definitely, although you wouldn't say on paper was a worthy WrestleMania main event, perhaps when you look at some of the main events we've had in history, I would turn around and say that this wasn't a bad match and was definitely up there with match of the night along with the opener. I probably would say that this just about is match of the night for me, but certainly it could have been better if it had gone a bit longer, in my opinion. It wasn't the longest match in the world, and like I say, the buzzer drop wasn't involved. But as we go towards the finish, Bret Hart, I mean, he was managed to get Yoko off of his feet multiple times. It did give you that belief that, hang on, Bret Hart has a chance here. He could do something. He could pick up the victory against Yoko. He actually manages, when Yoko misses a turnbuckle spot, goes to the ground, Bret does put the sharpshooter, manages to get it on Yokozuna, which makes you think, God, he's actually going to do it. But of course, Yokozuna, he has a manager. Mr. Fuji was on the outside, had some salt, sand, whatever in his hand, and threw it in Bret Hart's eyes, which of course, once again, the referees happened to miss it. The referees had an awful night on WrestleMania night, and of course, Yoko just goes and pins him. There wasn't another small nitpick. He didn't even do a leg drop or something just to finish it off, but was a 1, 2, 3, and with a brand new champion in Yokozuna. And Yokozuna was a fantastic athlete, by the way. For a man of his size, he could really move around. So this match, I just want to stress it again, was a decent match. And of course, Yoko, WWF champion at this point as well, and this will be the first time ever it felt we were closing off WrestleMania where actually the heel was going to be, leaving the show as the victor and the champion. I mean, we didn't really have where a scenarios like these. We're not used to it. Always the fans were sent home happy. That's what used to happen back in the day. And I mean, Hulk Hogan comes out and says, that he's upset with the situation. Look, you can see that, Yokozuna, Mr. Fuji, blatantly cheated. He goes to check on Bret Hart, his fallen friend, takes him to the outside, going to take him to the back, and Mr. Fuji calling out Hogan on his words earlier in the evening, saying that, he would challenge Hogan for that championship now. He's willing to take on Hulk Hogan right here, right now, that he can't beat Yokozuna. Bret Hart giving him the signal, even though he's got the everything in his eyes, he can't quite see what's going on. He's lost the championship at this point. He wants Hogan to go for it, and Hogan goes into the ring. Yoko grabs hold of him, looks like he's got, well, Hogan can't go anywhere. Mr. Fuji again with the sand salt in his hand to throw it in Hogan's eyes. Instead, Hogan gets out of the way, goes into Yoko's eyes, and of course then Hogan hits a punch there on Mr. Fuji, knocks him out of the ring, and then of course knocks Yoko to the ground, hits the famous Hogan leg drop. 1, 2, 3, and your new World Wrestling Federation champion at the end of WrestleMania 9 was Hulk Hogan. Now, I'm so grateful that Hulk Hogan never tried to become president, because goodness, this must be politics 101. Criminal, absolutely criminal. I don't know what was going through anyone's heads booking this. Now, I do understand the place actually erupted. Maybe you could ask me, what do I know? I know nothing. The fans went home happy. That's what Vince McMahon wanted, because we didn't really, as I said, we didn't get that back then, and this WrestleMania included. We didn't have a bad guy winning the main event. taking the championship and going off. The first time that actually happened was WrestleMania 2000, Triple H winning the Fatal 4-Way at that show. Before that, it was always a babyface winning the main event, regardless what happened, whether there's championship involved or not. It was always a babyface victor. So this was no exception to the rule. Hogan beating Yokozuna, but Yoko having a title reign for like 3 minutes. All that hard work that had been gone into Yokozuna since he debuted to be, undefeated, win the Royal Rumble as well, go all the way to WrestleMania, couldn't be taken off of his feet. To then lose to Hogan in a couple of minutes. Yes, he'd wrestled before, but still, this was just horrible booking. It got over nobody in this match. Bret Hart looked weaker. Yoko looked weaker. I mean, you destroyed what you did with the MegaManiacs and Money Inc., which was your double main event as well of the show. This just, for me, was awful all round. And, I mean, thankfully, Hogan didn't hold the belt for very long. Yoko did win the belt back and then would hold that championship for a good 9-10 month reign. But for me, all over, this was just a mess. And again, we're going to go now into the fantasy booking, because if you wanted Hogan to be the champion at the end of this show, why didn't you just go and book the biggest match possible? Because Bret Hart and Yokozuna, it was, we were going into the new generation from what we had of the golden era. We were moving into the new, rather than having the big muscle men. We were kind of going to the smaller athletes, or the bigger superstars if you want, because of course Yoko definitely goes on the bigger side. But looking at it here, I mean, you might as well have just not done the Royal Rumble rule. I would have said perhaps for that year, done it the year after, or if you were going to do it, have Hogan win the Rumble. Just do that and have Bret Hart against Hogan at WrestleMania. It would have been seen as a dream match at the time. A passing of the torch would have made so much more sense. Yes, I'm pretty sure I would not have been happy about the result. I never usually was very happy when I saw Hogan winning every single time on every single show in every single main event as a kid anyway, so I probably wouldn't have liked it, but I suppose I would have respected it more. It would have made more sense, in my opinion, to have just booked that as your main event. The fans would have been happy anyway that Hogan would have walked away champion. As Yoko lost on this event anyway, maybe Yokozuna should have faced The Undertaker. Maybe that's a match they should have done at WrestleMania 9 instead. It certainly would have been much more of an attraction match, than what we got. It certainly would have been a better in-ring match than what we got as well. So for me, that would have been something I would have done just to make things better. I think would have made more sense. Yes, I still wouldn't have been happy with the final result, but the fans were happy on the night, I guess, and as it's face versus face, you couldn't really go wrong. This probably would have seemed like those, once in a lifetime kind of matches that you had with like Rock and Hogan, and like with, Rock and Cena. This could have been one of those at WrestleMania 9, and perhaps could have been a big draw at the time, but hey, what do I know? I'm just a fan. So to give this show an overall rating out of 10, goodness, how am I going to do this? I'm going to go for a 3 out of 10. For me, this is one of the worst WrestleManias of all time. Like I say, there's so many bad finishes to matches. Even though some of the in-ring stuff isn't that bad, I would turn around and say that the finishes completely ruin everything that you go and see. And I do say, I recommend people always go and watch this show, because a lot of people do criticise the product of what we see today. I think you'd be more thankful of what you get today if you were to see this. Although I would say the build-up to WrestleMania, of course, this is being recorded right here in preparation for WrestleMania 37. The build-up to this show is booked better than WrestleMania 37. The storylines have got some longevity. Some of the storylines actually have been booked from late December of '92 going through to WrestleMania, where you don't really have that here in 2021. So in some cases, some things are done okay, but actually the execution of this show, this could have and should have been a lot better. With the card that we actually got, Tatanka should have won the championship, or you don't book the match at all, in my personal opinion. Headshrinkers and Steiners, decent match, probably too long, very unlucky with the finish. If you're going to have a botch somewhere, it's how we leave them, folks. It's a bit of a shame that it was that finish there. Doink and Crush, that's something I'm going to take away from the show, along with looking as well with the beautiful Caesar's Palace. There are definitely a couple of moments that are going to stick with me that I'll remember most from this show. Razor and Bob Backlund, goodness, it was so short you even forget it's there. I mean, Kamala and Bam Bam Bigelow was something that was supposed to be on WrestleMania 9 and was pulled last minute for timing issues. I mean, some of the matches I said in the early matches were probably arguably a bit too long, so you could have fit this match on. It's a shame we didn't get it, but hey, I guess it wasn't meant to be. Like I said, the MegaManiacs and Money, goodness, a complete mess there. Whole thing was booked wrong from start to finish, in my personal opinion. Luger and perfectly fine on the evening of what they did with WrestleMania on that day, just wasn't the strongest match. Taker and Gonzales, absolute travesty. I mean, probably the Undertaker's worst ever WrestleMania match. And the main event, the match itself was fine, but Hogan with the politics, yeah, for me, has to be a 3 out of 10. This definitely has to go down as one of the worst WrestleManias ever. But is it the worst one ever? I don't think it is. I think there are a couple that are worse. Now, some people are going to be screaming at the screen to me, WrestleMania 27. No, I don't think that is worse than this show. This one is worse than 27, but I would say that it is better than WrestleMania 2 and WrestleMania 11. I think those two are worse than this show. WrestleMania 2 in the different locations was just a mess. Some really weird decisions done on that show as well, and just showed that didn't kind of work. Everything that worked so well in WrestleMania 1, things worked with WrestleMania 2, but no, it just, this one is a bad WrestleMania. If you go back, especially look at it from now compared to what we've had with WrestleMania, doesn't stand to the test of time. And WrestleMania 11, for me, just was an off night all round to everybody. Even some of the matches that were put together that you could argue in terms and say that were better on paper, maybe not screwed up as finishes on this, the matches themselves just aren't as good. Even if the finishes are a bit more complete, they just aren't as good. And for me, you know, having an NFL player, Lawrence Taylor, as the main event of a WrestleMania, great for Bam Bam Bigelow, great to look back on his legacy. They had a WrestleMania main event. I just wish it wasn't against Lawrence Taylor. And for me, that takes away from that Mania as well. I even remember as a child, I wasn't connected and invested the same way then. And WrestleMania 11 has always been my least favourite WrestleMania. But that's all from me. That's my WrestleMania 9 review. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did you enjoy the show when you watched it? What are your memories? What are your thoughts from back in the day? Maybe go back and watch WrestleMania 9 if you haven't, and come back here and then let me know what you thought in the comments below. Definitely would love to know your take going back to 1993. And like I say, it wasn't the worst pay-per-view of 1993. I do think it actually is better than SummerSlam as well. So there is some plus points you can give to that show. But that's all from me anyway. Thank you for watching. Of course, WrestleMania 37 predictions will be coming on the channel. They will be dropping on Tuesdays, so keep an eye out for them as well. Also, you can go and check out already my NXT TakeOver Stand and deliver those predictions on the channel for you right now. And the Q&A Ask SCW is dropping tomorrow. There'll be videos dropping daily between now and past WrestleMania, so there's a reason to be keeping an eye on this channel every single day. On the road to 1K, only 37 away, and with your support, that can get there. And also, I'm very thankful for the support I do get from everyone that watches and supports this channel. Thank you all so very much. But that's all for me. Thank you for watching. Take care. Have yourselves a great day. You've been watching SCW here on YouTube.